Welcome to the Independent Artist Podcast, sponsored by the National Association of Independent Artists.
Also sponsored by Zapplication. I'm Will Armstrong, and I'm a mixed media artist.
I'm Douglas Sigworth, glassblower. Join our conversations with professional working artists. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another week on the podcast. Thanks for joining us today. We have a special kind of week here. We have a great guest who's joining us for the conversation today. I feel like over the last few years on the show, we have had talks with people who've gone through some pretty extraordinary physical challenges, some stresses, some trauma. And it isn't so much just to focus on pain. It's really, in my mind, what I find interesting and kind of exciting about these kinds of topics is that when we are pushed to our max, what we learn from those experiences. And being independent artists, we are vulnerable. We are in a position where a lot rests on our shoulders to make it all work. And there's so many gifts, there's so many things about this life that we love. We wouldn't trade it for anything. But it is kind of that daily reminder of just like what we do is unique and is hard. And so this talk that we have today with our guest, Carol Greiwe, she touches on a story for her where she was extremely vulnerable and what she learned from that and how she came back to her practice and how she approaches her practice with less stress and less anxiety. And the whole talk about perfection, it's like what we view as being perfect. And loosening up that a little bit and how we can live our lives differently. Unfortunately, you might notice Will's not bantering back and forth with me here today. So I guess I should address that topic as well. Will could not join the conversation. He has the craziest week going on right here. He texted me all of the trips he's making from Fergus Falls to Minneapolis, St. Paul, bringing family, his kids, back and forth. It's literally almost every day that he is an Uber driver to the airport. So it just didn't work out that he could be part of this conversation as much as he wanted to. So we are disappointed that Will couldn't join us today, but I'm going to cut right to the interview because this is a great long talk with her, and I want to get right to her conversation. So here we are. Here's our guest for the week, Carol Greiwe. Hello there. Are you there? There
Hi.
we are.
Can you see me and hear me? Hello.
I see you. I hear you.
I'm ready. I'm ready to do this.
You're ready?
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
Good. Awesome.
One question. Do you know how to pronounce my name? My last name? No.
No. I know how to say Carol.
Oh, right. That's good. It's Greiwe.
Well, I have been saying it right all these years.
Good. Awesome. It's I before E except after Greiwe.
Yeah, I before E except after Greiwe.
Yeah. One of my friends says A-E-I-O-U. So he's like, that's how I always remember how to spell your name.
A-E, because A-B, okay.
Yeah, anyway, German. It's the rare occasion when someone truly knows how to pronounce my name. Never have.
Is it a constant battle?
It
you
is,
want to fill in the blank for him?
Yeah, I'm like, Carol G is fine. If you,
Carol G.
Carol G, yeah.
Well, everyone, I am here with Carol G, also known as Carol Greiwe, here from Portland, Oregon. And we've been talking about getting together and having a podcast conversation for a year. But then you had a year kind of get in the way of all of that, didn't you?
Oh, yeah, I sure did. Oh, man.
So we'll save that topic for a little bit later in our conversation.
Yeah.
But I wanted to start off by saying, you know what? It was so wonderful seeing you in Des Moines a few weeks back because that was your first show after this crazy year that you've had.
It was.
And you were just lightness and brightness. And what was that like for you coming back after everything you've been through and being back at your first show?
It was amazing. It's hard to put into words, but like I hadn't done a show since August of 2023. So I'm coming up to a year since this experience that I had that changed my life. Yeah, it was incredible. I had to get familiar with talking about my work and showing my work. But what was huge was just seeing all of my colleagues and friends on the circuit and just all the support and love that came about. And it was a lot of fun. And I went a different route. Being a jeweler, I have the option of flying. And so that was really convenient to be able to fly, because in the past I would drive everywhere. I mean, I would drive to Texas to do a show, which was kind of ridiculous.
No, I hear you there.
Yeah. I mean, after I bought my trimline tent, I was like, I've got everything I need. I'm going to hit the road and do it. Mm-hmm. It was really nice to just take a step back and fly and, have more support that way. And my mom and dad came and helped, which was wonderful.
To have a little posse to help you there.
Yeah.
So do you think that you'll go back to doing the driving every time, and this was a one-off, or does it feel like maybe that opens possibilities for you?
I think I made the decision to drive regionally. And for me, being in Oregon, that would be, Washington, Idaho, Utah, California. I'm totally fine with like a 10-hour radius. But anything further than that, I will fly. I've just wrapped my brain around that and feel better about that. Just takes a lot of stress off of me. It's a lot to be on the road, and I couldn't really find someone to join me on the road for that long, because I did really think about driving to Des Moines in the beginning. But I was like, someone's going to have to take off like 10 days to do that, and that's just not possible.
And Des Moines, was that a one shot out and back kind of a thing?
It was. It didn't. I was on the wait list for Cherry Creek. Fingers crossed. I was hoping for that, but it just wasn't in the cards this year. But it's not uncommon for me to get waitlisted and to just go and do one show. I just try and make the best of all the opportunities that come about. And
Plus, sometimes when we've got kind of that tour lined up and the second piece of the puzzle is a wait list, oftentimes if we show up, you never know. I mean, some last minute, someone doesn't make it, and even if it's a different category, they'll funnel in somebody who's there and ready to go and eager.
Absolutely. I believe in that 100%, just the energy that you put out and what you can receive from that. Yeah, just to stay super positive, for sure.
So you had lots of hugs and lots of reconnections with people in Des Moines.
Oh my gosh, it was so good. So good to be surrounded by my people. And I loved that you and Renee were across from me. I was
God, I knew you were going to be at the show, and I was going to seek you out.
Yeah.
And I think we were all like doing the pulling stuff out of the van mode. And there you were, bright-eyed and big hugs, and we were so happy.
Yes, likewise. Because I didn't know you all were going to be across from me, so that was golden, and so grateful for that. You are gems, and I'll never forget the first time we met back in Sun Valley a few years ago. Yeah, and we seem to always kind of be near one another at shows, and I dig that.
It does. Whenever we are in a show, it feels like we're in the neighborhood with each other. There must be some kind of like synergy between our work and thinking.
Totally. Yeah, that's good.
Well, talk about your work for those people getting to know you here for the first time. So you said you're a jeweler, but kind of tell us a little bit about kind of your approach and how you describe your work.
Right. Yeah, I stumbled upon jewelry probably about 29 years ago through a fusion of ceramics and metal. Started dabbling in clay and met a jeweler, and kind of those two worlds came about. I'm a fabricator. Everything I do is hand done and one of a kind, and unique to my jewelry is I make my own ceramic gemstones. I call them gemstones. So I'm fabricating those stones as well. That's a unique collection that I do. And that all came about, 29 years ago through a ceramics class and finding metal and bringing those two elements together.
I didn't know that. So some of the star of your pieces, the gems, are hand-built ceramics, you're saying? Cool.
Yeah. So I
thought they were all from the earth. Well, they are from the earth.
Yes,
ceramics is from the earth.
Yeah,
but I thought they were actual source gemstones or something.
No, I mean, I call them, I kind of name them after after me. I mean, I made them, but yeah, they are, I mean, they are natural in a sense in that, they're from clay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I have 3 collections, the ceramic, and then I do work with unusual, unique gemstones, and then diamonds and pearls. So kind of those are my three niches. But I love the ceramics. It's truly original, truly unique, one of a kind. I mean, love it. And that's how I learned. I didn't go to school for art or metal. I had a mentor, and she took me under her wing and worked with her for about 10 years. And she had a jewelry store, so I helped her run the store. So I learned a lot about, how to make a living making art as well, which is important.
And the things that we tend to miss out on in academia is that component of making a living at it. We learn how to make things.
Right.
But how do we live off of it?
I know. Exactly. Yeah. So a lot of learning. And I mean, I feel like I learned a tremendous amount when I started doing shows and really putting myself out there and meeting more in our community and, just kind of like broadening my comfort zone as far as like doing shows and getting out there and starting locally and then regionally and then nationally and, hopping on a plane to go to Miami and do Coconut Grove and like, what am I doing? But, you just figure it out. And even though I'm a solo artist, I mean, I know I'm not alone. That was comfort. And being a part of this community is that I'm never alone, even though I'm like driving across country by myself, or I work in my studio by myself. I'm always connecting with people like you and show coordinators and whatnot. So that's wonderful sense of community.
So you feel like when you get there, when you get to that spot, whatever the show is at, that you are amongst a supportive crew.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I feel like being a jewelry artist, there is a sense of vulnerability and solitariness if you are, doing the traveling on your own. And then also just the materials are such a desirable thing to want to steal.
Right.
I mean, is there a sense of that you're kind of on guard and protective all the time, always looking over your shoulder a bit?
Yeah. I mean, you definitely have to be vigilant and aware of that. I feel like I've done some really naive things and, nothing's happened, but I was never of the mindset. So like, I always wanted the jewelry on me wherever I was. I didn't feel comfortable leaving it in the hotel room or wherever I was staying. And, you just be savvy and smart about how you walk, how you carry your work. I mean, I'm not a production jeweler. So
what does that mean?
Production means like you create infinite amount of work, whether you're like, you have a mold and you're casting like a lot of inventory. And being a fabricator and one of a kind, I mean, I'd be pushing it if I had 100 pieces at a show. I mean, there's jewelers that roll suitcases in with work, and that's not my profile. That's not my style. I don't work that way. I don't work for quantity. I work for quality. I pride myself in that.
So maybe you're less of a mark than, say, somebody who might show up with a
big suitcase,
huge booth of like gold or something like that.
Yes, exactly. So I just, you just get creative with how you carry a bag, groceries, whatever. You just be incognito. But then, I mean, there's definitely been, sadly, just in the past few years, some jewelers have been getting targeted, I think more so at shows.
I feel like the more I talk to other artists, that there is a sense right now, I mean, it kind of is in waves where it comes in again. And right now seems to be especially an important time of jewelers feeling like they are being targeted.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's a lot of theft going on.
Well, I made a decision just recently with what happened in Chicago Old Town. I'm not going to apply to any shows that are in large cities. I'm not going to apply to Chicago or Miami. And I mean, we all have choices. And I'm like, why put myself at risk and my livelihood? I mean, so I just don't want to go there and just take care of that.
Right. I mean, a moment can change things for a long time, can set you back. And you've had experiences in the last year where you've had those kinds of moments where it almost feels like your life has changed now. There's things that can't be undone. And maybe this is a good segue into that. I mean, what happened to you last August that kind of set you down a course of a year of recovery?
Yeah. Extraordinary what happened. Just after doing Sun Valley last August and came back home, and late at night, probably around midnight, my head started hurting beyond compare. Like I didn't know what was happening. I was in the worst amount of pain. It was terrifying. I felt like my brain was being squeezed by a gorilla. I mean, it was insane. And
nothing normal, not like you've ever felt before. Yeah.
Nothing normal. No issue with headaches, migraines. I didn't even really know what was happening, but I just knew this is terrifying. This is scary. This is not right. And I sat for a second, thinking it might stop, and it didn't stop. And my instinct was to reach out to one of my best friends, not to call 911. That didn't even enter my brain pathway. Right. So I reached out to my dear friend, Amy Fields. She's a night owl. And I was like, she happened to answer her phone. And I was hysterical and just told her what was happening. I didn't know what was happening. And she came over. And in the meantime, I was in so much pain that I blacked out. And I don't know how I was able to even leave my bedroom to get to the door to let her in. And I do remember some segments of what transpired. And she had called the paramedics, and they arrived around the same time. And, they're asking me questions about migraines and stroke questions, this, that, the other. And, I started vomiting, and they're like, okay, she needs to go to ER. And so then, I blacked out from the moment they took me out of my apartment on the gurney Yeah. And then I woke up in the hospital post-surgery the next day. So this happened in the middle of Thursday night, Friday morning, and then blackout, don't remember anything. And then Saturday morning, wake up, Amy's like, oh, I'm on the way to the airport to get your mom and dad.
What a surreal experience to be like, to know that it's like you're in distress and then wake up the next day and have lost that time.
Yeah.
What happened to me?
I know. And so what happened, I had a brain hemorrhage. I had a subarachnoid hemorrhage. That's what was going down that night. And so, pieces of that blackout experience Amy has shared with me. And then she called on another really good friend of mine. So, what those two endured while I was off the charts, not really present, but present, they've filled me in with, bits of that story that I don't recall. But I feel like I was in ER. I'm waiting for an hour or two before they knew what was actually happening. And so I was at the hospital closest to me, and then they did a scan and realized what was happening, and they transported me to the hospital on the other side of town.
So that's when they're like, the shit's getting real.
Yeah, they're like, shit's real. We gotta take her to the right place. And I was in the best hospital, had the best neurological team, the best neurosurgeon. A shout out to Providence St. Vincent and Dr. Ung, excuse me. I was in neurocritical care for 2 weeks. My parents flew out the next day, and they were with me for my recovery and all my support system here. And yeah, it's still like, it was super surreal still to this day that this happened.
Wow.
And, I have 2 holes in my head. And
holes as in they had to drill through your skull?
They had to drill, yeah. So the subarachnoid type of bleed hemorrhage that I had, I didn't have an aneurysm. I had a bleed, 2 different things.
Okay. Sure.
And I should also say, that I'm truly a miracle. I mean, I'm lucky to be alive. What happened to me? I know every physician I've talked to, they're like, you are so fortunate. And honestly, I don't know if Amy hadn't picked up her phone. I don't know if I would have called 911. So I wonder about that, and just the timing and synergy of everything. And, just grateful that things happened the way they did.
And do they have any kind of, is it such a fluke? Is it really just like there's no way to pinpoint genetics? And I've been next to you at shows like we've talked about, and nobody eats healthier than Carol Greiwe, everyone. She's like, I'm like, you take care of yourself. So, it's just so bizarre when you said that, when they were first saying they thought you might have a stroke. They didn't know what exactly was going on. It was a mystery. And I'm like, wait, no, she's not like too old for this. She's in good health. Where does this come from? Totally. It just doesn't make any sense.
I know. So what I experienced does fall under the umbrella of a stroke.
It does.
Yes,
okay.
Yeah, the hemorrhage does. And so it was a bleed between the lining of your brain, and it could happen to anyone. There's no predisposition. I don't have any family history. Stress and anxiety may contribute. There's no proof. So it just happened. Since this happened, I've made some changes in regards to how I go about doing life.
Like what? Like, tell me about that.
Yeah. So I definitely run more on the anxious spectrum in life. I feel like anxiety fuels creativity and whatnot. It wouldn't be uncommon that I would be at my studio 10 o'clock at night working, and just like wearing the hat of a solo business owner, entrepreneur, artist. There's so much that you do, and often wondering, did I do enough? And just feeling like I needed to work a lot.
And do you think that had to do with the career, or did that have to do with maybe just how you run things? Because I'm actually coming into focus these days myself on that whole issue of anxiety. I know it's the topic du jour for everyone, but I feel like one of the things why this career has been such the perfect fit is because I will burn myself out and work myself to death and stress myself out. In fact, on my screen right here, my therapist is helping me to learn how I can assess where my pressure level is and actively make choices of how to step towards or away from the pressure, and to see if just being aware of the pressure, if then choices can be made before they become too much.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Totally. Yeah, I feel like financial stress has always been a motivator. I chose this path and I don't regret it. I love it. It's truly unique. It's exciting. I'm constantly learning and experimenting and making beautiful work. But I don't have a consistent paycheck. I don't know where the money source is going to come from. So that has always sort of fueled my sense of work. And
definitely.
And I've also, I have that kind of ingrained in me. I'm from the Midwest, so I've got a good work ethic anyway. But since this happened, I feel like I can honestly leave my studio at a more reasonable hour, whatever. I can alter that, stay till 8 o'clock, whatever. And when I leave, I say to myself, or I say it out loud, you've done enough for today. And then I let it go. And I leave and I go about whatever, and trusting that I have enough work. There's always been, I'm working up until the last minute, trying to finish some pieces because I'm excited and want to show them. And no one's going to know that I don't have those pieces with me. And so I think just allowing more of a work-life balance, just trusting that everything's going to be okay. I move my body every day, and I will not sacrifice that. I will, if I don't get to my studio until 12 or 1 o'clock, that's okay. I was able to do the things that are really important to me.
When you say move your body, you're talking like exercise.
About exercise, yes. Yeah, those are important things. And to really being more mindful of all my action throughout the day. And that helps me with anxiety. I mean, just kind of really, it's something so simple as, I'm washing dishes and I'm washing this bowl, like really being zen about how I move through the day.
Like a presence, like
just
being present in that moment.
Yeah, every moment. And it has helped me a lot.
Has it helped your work any or changed anything about how you approach your work? Or do you think that's pretty much been locked in?
I think that's locked in, but I am a bit of a perfectionist. Spend hours on integrity with my work and making sure everything feels good and looks good. And I recently stumbled upon these Japanese ways of being. And one thing that jumped out was wabi-sabi and how like perfectly imperfect. And so I wrote that down, and that's on one of my benches. Everything I do is hand fabricated. So I have my late mentor in my brain also saying, looks great from a galloping horse, Carol. Like, don't like drive yourself crazy trying to get it perfect, because what is perfect, and just finding the beauty in imperfection. So just like allowing, like, I'm human and I'm making beautifully imperfect, perfect things. So yeah.
Hang tight. We'll be right back.
This episode of the Independent Artist Podcast is brought to you by Zap, the digital application service where artists and art festivals connect.
Will, I sat down last week and started looking over what shows are listed in Zap that I want to apply to for the next season.
Oh, thanks for the panic attack. I appreciate that. I haven't even begun. No, I really appreciate what they're doing for us as an industry.
And it's not just about us artists. I mean, it's also about the shows. They get to jury their show using our application images, and then the shows can manage all of our information using Zap's online platform.
I don't know about you, but I find myself late night doom scrolling after that first rejection of the season, so it's always helpful to me to have everything in one place.
Yeah. We want our stuff to be, we want someone to walk up and look at it and say, wow, it's beautifully crafted. It's got a heart. It's got soul.
Absolutely.
But then we don't want it to look like it was machine made. So then it's like, where is it handcrafted enough and good craftsmanship, but yet then we've now turned it into something that's so perfect. You know what I mean? That it's a step past our goal of what it really is.
Yeah, totally.
It's a head trip. I hear you there. I mean, that's maybe, some of the worries with like AI and stuff like that is the computer generated or 3D imaging or whatever types of technology we can use that is then making our stuff manufactured.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's something that's a issue with, being a jeweler and, jurying for shows.
Yeah. Tell me about that. Because you run a jury for Art in the Pearl. So,
yes.
What are you looking for in that sense?
Well, I mean, Art in the Pearl, their criteria is artistic excellence. That's pretty much, in a nutshell, what we're after is like the best of the best. And we have 5 jurors, and 1 juror is always a jeweler. Most jewelers have impeccable photos of their work, and it's hard to see what you're looking at with these amazing images. And so it's important to have someone that has wisdom and knowledge about jewelry and how it's made. But it's not uncommon that I'll be at a show and shocked about work that does get in my category, and a lot of work is manufactured or produced to a point that's not necessarily not done by that artist, but in a mechanism that is production element, and so I take issue with that on a personal level.
because there's other venues that they can sell their work.
Absolutely.
The shows that we're doing are designed specifically for the independent artist who's working on a smaller scale, but aspiring to unique high standards and quality.
Right. So I understand how that can happen, based on slides that were submitted and
Oh boy, you just dated yourself. You said slides.
Oh, well, yeah, sorry. I don't even know if I've ever applied to a show with slides, honestly. That's so funny. Yeah, so I am a bit archaic in the way I work, and I am a Luddite with this whole computer thing. I was like, oh gosh, I hope I can figure this out. And you did. Yes. But I just think circling back around, I just think that's, crucial I feel like all juries should have a jeweler on the jury.
I mean, I've been on a jury before, and when it comes to jewelry category, I can look at maybe the design of the work and have an opinion on how it looks, maybe as wearable sculpture or something like that. But when it comes to the making of it and what is maybe a trick or what is, a tell or something, I don't know. I have to rely on people who work in that.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. So, I just think that's something that most shows should be aware of and have the jeweler on the jury.
So how long were you down with the recovery?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
How long before you could come back to your work?
Right. So the recovery, the best thing is time and healing for the brain, and because the brain had swelled. So a good 6 months of recovery. So this happened in August, and my family doctor said, come, April, you'll start feeling more yourself. Through the support of family and friends in my community, I was given a lot of financial assistance, and I was able to have the time to recover. And I think that's why I'm doing so well, is that I was able to just heal.
Most artists, like you described, the financial component to why we work so hard is what terrifies us, is why we keep going.
Yeah.
And to be told that it's going to take you 6 months to heal, it's got to be like, how am I going to make a living for 6 months not making my work, not working?
I know.
So to have your community and your family and people step up and say, hey, we got you. What was that like?
Oh my gosh. There's another layer to this story.
Okay.
Yeah. So after I got out of the hospital, I was on my first outing with my parents, and we stopped by my studio because I needed to pay rent. And I unlocked my studio door, and the door was acting really strange, and it actually fell on me and my mom.
The door fell on you?
The door fell back onto us as it opens out. And I was like, this is very strange. Why is this happening? And I come in, turn the lights on, and my safe was totally gone. So someone had broken into my studio while I was in the hospital and took everything that was in my safe. Thank God my finished jewelry was not in the safe, because Art in the Pearl had just happened. And that was another wonderful thing that my friends did. Being on the board for Art in the Pearl, and also being an artist, you have to be present with your work. And the board allowed me to show my work without me actually being there. I was still in the hospital, and a group of friends put the show on for me, which was incredible.
Oh my gosh.
I know. And so one of my friends had my jewelry. He was responsible to pick it up and drop it off at the show each day. So had my jewelry been in my safe, that would have been catastrophic for me. So all my raw materials
I mean,
were taken. Yeah.
Not talking dollar amount, but just how many pieces could you estimate that you could have made out of those raw materials? Like, how much did that really set you back?
Well, gosh, some of that material, some of those stones I had been collecting. I mean, I've been making jewelry for 29 years. So some of that, some stones were irreplaceable. I had an ounce of gold. I mean, I mostly work in silver and then, also high carat gold. That's a good question. I mean, what's easier is just to quantify. There was probably about $25,000 worth of raw material in there. And that's a lot.
Was that a whole new layer of vulnerability?
Absolutely.
That just was like right there?
Oh, yeah. I was hysterical when I found out what had actually happened and, filed a police report and just kind of out of sorts. And one thing that my family set up for me, my brother and one of my cousins, they put a meal train together for me after the brain bleed to help with food and support that way.
Is that where like groceries come or actual meals arrive?
So actually you can, gift cards were sent to me. People would sign up to deliver food, just support in that
That's
way.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Before
great.
their situation, I had never even known that existed. That's pretty cool.
I hadn't either. It was wonderful.
Okay.
And then this whole other layer came about where it was even a bigger burden and shock to my livelihood. And how does Carol pick herself up from this experience? And a few friends here in Portland wanted to start a GoFundMe for me. And I was a bit hesitant at first to allow it to happen because I sort of felt I was partly to blame for what happened with the studio theft in that I don't have insurance. I had a safe and I thought that was secure enough. I don't have cameras. I didn't have a gate. So there were all these other layers of security that I felt I could have had but didn't, and was feeling part to blame for that.
Well, that's kind of sucky then to turn that onto yourself like that.
I know. That was me doing it to me. But my friends were like, no, Carol, you were violated. You're a victim of this experience. And I think you should it's totally okay to ask for support. And so I was able to listen to what they were saying and allow them to write a compelling story for what happened. And then, oh my God, then all just even more support came through and
the outpouring.
Oh my gosh, just, I can't even quantify it. I mean, just my immediate core and then beyond this immense ripple effect of people reaching out, giving whatever they could.
My friend Oliver, who went through a similar situation, he said that when I started a GoFundMe for him when he had a similar health situation, and he said every dollar that somebody gave meant so much to him, but what meant even as much were all of the kind words. That the words and the thoughts that people would stop their day and think about him when he was going through. I mean, is that a similar reaction that you had too, just all of the love?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I mean, just even back to before this happened and the support that I received from my friends that put the show on for me created this for me. I mean, I have the most incredible friends and network that is a result of who I am and what I've put out there. And for them to just show up like that, I mean, I have known that I have a tight group of people here. They came out in such a magnificent way that it was profound, just the amount of support that I've received. And even another wonderful thing, jewelers found out about what happened across the nation, like reaching out and sending care packages of stones, like, can you use this? And that was just magnificent. I know.
So like a bonding just in like what you guys do in common.
Absolutely. Yeah. And a few of the jewelers that sent care packages, they too were victims of theft at one time in their life. And so they could, of course, it was very relatable. So many tears of joy in regards to what happened. And, I have no control over any of it. And I'm just grateful for what came about. And I'm still here and I get to live and experience and do what I love, and forever changed by it.
I find that whole thing interesting, that when we are at our lowest, it is hard sometimes accepting something like that or asking for support and help. But if the shoe's on the other foot, any of your other friends, even somebody you kind of like knew, remotely, you have such a kind heart, you would connect to that person and in an instant would want to give and be of a support. But when we need, it is often hard to be in that position, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yes. I know. I definitely consider myself stubborn by nature, and also, I can do it. I can do it by myself. I don't need any help. But this was extraordinary situation, and it takes courage to ask for help. I'm really glad that I allowed the support, and would not be here without it, honestly. I mean, you and Renee were a part of that whole support train, and still have my teddy bear.
We couldn't give you flowers, so the next best thing, teddy bear.
That was the best thing when that arrived in my room. I was like, oh yeah, I've got something to hold on to. It was great.
Wow. So what was it like then, actually? I mean, so you had to heal, and they're like, you need this much time. But when you could start getting back to the studio and picking up the pieces and standing on your own 2 feet and getting back to work, what was that experience like? Like, was it hard, or was it exhilarating? Tell me about that.
Right. Well, I had a little bit of PTSD coming to the studio. There was actually one of the local news stations asked to interview me regarding what had happened with the theft at my studio. When I went to the studio, I had a little bit of stress about being in the space. And
was that for the interview the first time?
That was for the interview for the first time. And one of my best friends was here from Indiana, and she helped me kind of walk through that situation. And we smudged it. We saged it. Yeah. Nice. Just energetically, just to make it my space again, and kind of left the studio in disarray for the interview. And then afterwards went in and pieced it back together, and kind of organized things, and didn't actually really start working at my bench until probably February of this year. I did a couple of really low-key shows, an open studio, and then our holiday sale at the studio. I'm at a collective ceramic studio. That's where my studio is. I'm the only jeweler who works in clay. Everyone in the building is a ceramic artist. So we often will participate in Portland Open Studios and do our annual holiday show. So loosely participated in that. I was still on some gabapentin, which is something you take for nerve damage and pain, and went off that.
And I've actually learned lately that it is also prescribed in some cases for anxiety.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I know. So so Tylenol and gabapentin, they were my friends, and off the gabapentin, and I still take Tylenol just to help at night. I just take it before bed, but I think that's kind of an old wives' tale too. My mom takes Tylenol every night before bed. Help with rest. I don't know. Yeah. So I also would get overstimulated and overwhelmed with sound, with light, with attention span.
Yep, all trauma effects,
right?
Definitely.
Totally. Yeah. So I was at, maybe like an hour or two, I would be at the studio, and come February, I just started to gradually increase the amount of time that I was there, and bring my eye mask and take rest breaks. Just really, that's still kind of a part of my new way of being, managing stress and anxiety. I set an alarm. I take breaks try to take a movement break or rest break every 2 hours, just to, because I sit a lot for the work that I do, and kind of separating myself from the intensity of, looking tight in at what I do, that just taking a step away and resting is
it's
key.
important. And we totally take that for granted. I know that one of the things that in one of my sessions with my therapist too, she says, so when you get yourself kind of into a task, do you set an end point for yourself? And I broke into laughter. Here I am, like 53 years old. And it's like she's presenting something to me that as soon as she said it, it was like, duh. I mean, that's just the way it's supposed to be. But no, I actually start something and I go at it until I'm like starving, like until all the physical body things start saying, hey, mister, you need to take care of something, you know? And it's like, that's so great that not that this experience happened, but that coming back to the experience, that's what you're coming back to it with like setting boundaries around that.
Yeah.
And it's helping. It sounds like it's helping.
It is helping. And also, just really listening to where I'm at in mind and body, and also where I'm at with a piece that I'm working on too. And I mean, I've definitely been there with a piece where I'm like, oh no, I'm going to win here. I'm battling and I'm going to win.
This thing. Yeah.
And don't mess with me. And so, sometimes it works and sometimes I make mistakes that are terrible but it's the stubborn nature in me. But, I've learned from those experiences to be like, okay, no, today you're not soldering. That's just not in the cards, and just do other types of work.
Do you sometimes feel like the mind work component too to our work, the creativity, the design, the where we're going with something, that we sometimes discount that as actual work too? Like we think of the actual mechanics of building something, or like blowing glass or setting a stone or whatever, that's the work. But actually, I mean, there's so many like stuff with our mind that I don't think we give ourselves enough time to stress-free wander and play and create and think. I don't know. Does that sound like that for you? Or
I definitely, that's a huge component of what we do. I mean, our mind is so active constantly and traveling around when we're working. And I think it's important to just listen to that and adjust how you're working in accordance with that. And, allow a bit more flexibility and openness to that process, and not be so rigid, and just let things enter and kind of roll with things that way. I mean, one thing too, like I have to make sure I'm nourished when I eat too, because I find hunger is a distraction for me. So, I really need to be like fed, and oftentimes I'll have it be totally quiet in my studio, where depending on what I'm working on, to just listen, because there's a communication that happens between me and that piece. So I have to
the materials and stuff when you're working at it. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. And especially if it's a high-end piece I'm working on, it requires more focus, and try to like reduce any stress or anxiety about how much money we're talking about with, the stone that I'm working on, or the materials, if it's all gold or, those are all factors that come into play.
So if I understand you right, are you saying like the stress of working on that piece, like I can't mess up with the amount of money that's in these materials I'm working on? Is that what you're saying?
I feel like, yes, there is for sure that layer is added. For me, the stakes seem higher given the amount of monetary value in the piece. It's probably better to just treat it like any old thing, but sometimes that's hard to do. Just being aware of it, and just taking the time. I mean, if I'm working on a really involved piece, it takes as long as it takes, and that's how it should be. Really staying in tune with how I am feeling and how the piece is coming along, and circling back around to not force any situation and just let it happen naturally.
How would you describe your aesthetic? Like if you were going to describe what you want your work to be, like adjectives or whatever, what are some descriptors that describe Carol Greiwe's work?
Less is more is
Mm-hmm.
definitely one hallmark. I
Mm-hmm.
don't gild the lily. I love clean, simple lines and design, integrity in my finished work and craftsmanship, hand fabricated. That's how I learned. So I, work directly with the metal, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't do any casting or carving. That's a layer of work I would like to get into, because there are certain things you can do in wax
Mm-hmm.
carving that you can't do in fabrication. Truly one of a kind and unique, simple, elegant, fun, different, edgy.
If I were to describe your work, that's exactly how I would describe it. I love it's clean, contemporary.
Thank you.
It feels like the gem or the focal point is truly the star of your work. Like it seems like everything else is a support that brings your eye to that look.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one thing I think about, I've never worked with jewelry, and I don't even know how to go about creating something that is like a personal form of expression for a collector. What we do is something people live with. People come into their home and they see an installation on their wall and they can tell the story about the artist and blah, blah, blah. So how do you approach your work knowing that it is also meant to be like somebody's personal style or something that they say about themselves?
Right. There was a time where I feel like I made jewelry trying to make pieces that I thought people would want or like. And that's not the right approach. I just make what I love and what I enjoy, and the designs and the lines that I see, and knowing that someone is going to connect with my aesthetics, my design sense. And that's the beauty of it, is that attraction, that connection. Those people come and see my work for the first time and they're like, yeah, you're my person. And that is great. So that's been a shift for me as I've grown in my career, is just to make what I like and
what you would want to wear on yourself.
Absolutely. And I wear my work and I love it. I love what I do. And maybe some designs, there has to be some experimentation constantly with designs and new pieces, and maybe some piece doesn't come out right, and you figure that out in the making of it. I sketch a little bit, but I often just jump right in and work with the metal, and the metal is kind of like my sketch, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but yeah, bottom line is just I make what I love and make what I wear, and my people find me. And that's the best for me. That was one wonderful thing about being in Des Moines a couple weeks ago, and that being my first show, and talk about being rusty and not out there talking about my work, and having a lot of engagement and connection. And for me, it's important to have people try my work on. It's wearable art. And I'm a jeweler that's under glass. I don't have an open display that's not comfortable for me. I don't like that. It stresses me out. So
because it could walk away.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. You sign up for that. You take that risk if you decide to do that. And that does not work for me. So I pull everything out for that individual to try on. So that is layer one, is, how do you get someone try something on, to not be shy about it. And oftentimes it's, the person just comes in and there's no hesitation, and they want to try and play.
And that's them. That's their personality.
Totally.
But it might not be everyone's personality.
Absolutely. So I try to make people feel comfortable when they come in, and they might not ask to try something on, but I can see them looking at a particular piece. So I'll go ahead and pull it out, and just so it's out of the case, and maybe loosens
kind
up
of break the seal, not break the seal, but kind of break that barrier. Like, this thing that you've been looking at for a minute, I can now pull out and put it on the other side of the glass to make it more approachable.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel like there can be an intimidating factor being under glass, and my pricing is not visually available. You don't see my pricing. It's priced underneath. And so, a lot of people, that might intimidate them. And I just want people to feel comfortable when they come in and see my work and talk to me and start the conversation from there. Yeah.
Do you feel like if you are creating work that you would wear for yourself, right? Do you find then that there's also that connection or that bond with people similar to you too? I mean, that come in your booth, and if they have a vibe that they jive with your work, well, they are most likely going to have a vibe that they jive with you too. So is it kind of like a reciprocal thing?
Kind of, yeah, yeah. I'd say that's the easiest. You know, like there's an identity, and we're like, oh yeah, I could see you wearing my work. Yeah, but then, but also on the flip side, there are ladies that walk out of my booth purchasing a piece, and I never thought they would be into it.
Surprise
yeah, yeah. So it's just proof that you can't judge anyone, and you know there's anything's possible, and just to be really kind and gracious to everyone that steps into your booth, because that's acknowledgement, that's recognition that they're curious, and just to be surprised and allow anything to happen. And so yeah, it's fun. I love that. I mean, that's being a solo artist and being in my studio by myself. Being on the road and connecting, doing shows is wonderful. I mean, that's how I meet people and meet other artists, and it fuels me like no other. Yeah.
I guess one thing I think about is forming that connection with a collector is a bit different in kind of what I do versus you, because there's so much more intimacy. I mean, you're basically standing over a case that is, a foot wide or a foot and a half wide, and you guys are that close to each other looking down and handing pieces back and forth, where I might have more of a 3-foot distance between a conversation, or a 5-foot or whatever. I could be out of my booth. And it almost seems more like this connection is right there. They're touching you. You're handing your work back and forth. I mean, is that kind of exhausting and draining to be that up close all day with people?
You nailed it. I mean, it's super intimate, and there is a lot of exchange. I often feel like it's kind of like therapy. You know, a lot of times people are sharing life stories and opening up, and yeah, at the end of the day, for sure, it can feel depleted, but also fueled by it too, just talking to people. But jewelry is personal adornment, and there's an energy about it. Just finding that common thread and sharing. And it's not uncommon too. After, like, whenever I sell a piece, it's that exchange. I come outside of my booth and I'm like, can I hug you? You know, this is so cool. Yeah. Like, you have a part of me with you now. And so, so that's great. And so first time buyers become collectors, and those collectors have become best friends to me. And so they're a part of my family now. And so, yeah, it's awesome.
So let me ask you too, do sometimes the shows, like you'll have maybe a collector come in and like what you do, but maybe they don't see the piece that they want to go home with that day. How much of, like, after the show does it turn into like sourcing perhaps a stone for them and creating a custom piece? How much of that is part of your business model? That's
a big part of it. And that's something I put out into the universe a handful of years ago, was to do more custom work. Okay. I love that collaborative sense of joining forces with someone and creating their dream piece and creating the motto of I truly think anything is possible, and so I love that. So there is a component of that for sure that is a big part of what I do, and if there's an intrigue, and if I can find a particular stone or bring a different design about and work with that person, yes, I'm all about it. But then there's also a situation where it doesn't work out, and to be okay with that, like to try and realize that, no, this isn't really in my wheelhouse, or I don't want to take this project on. But oftentimes I feel like it's totally doable, and I'm all in to make it work out. But just, that rare situation where it might not be in the cards.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes they'll say, oh, great. Can you do something custom? And then they start describing what they want. And it isn't your work. It's like somebody, maybe it's a jeweler down the street that you know, like, oh, this person, why don't you go to them? If it's a situation where they truly are bonding with your aesthetic.
Absolutely.
Then you're saying that is something, are you like kind of like bringing them into the fold? And then how do you kind of keep them within consideration? Is it through social media, like looking at your stuff that you put online? How does that work?
Right. So that's, I'll frame that. I do custom work in my aesthetic. So I'm not going to be like, make this Tiffany piece from said magazine or whatnot. Like if they bring in a example of that type of jewelry, I'm like, if these are my aesthetics, if you jam with this, then let's talk about, the possibility. And so depending on where the connection is, if I'm on the road doing a show, then, we'll, communicate via email. I'll share pictures and images that way. And just you just work with logistics. The best is if they're local, if they happen to be in Portland, because there's a lot of, depending on what's involved, if it's a ring, there's a lot of sizing and fittings involved. And so that can be done remotely, but I find it easier if they're able to come to the studio, which is great, but not always possible.
One thing I've wondered is jewelers tend to be really savvy with putting their work out on Instagram and social media and stuff like that and making sales that way. But then you also run the risk of getting designs copied and stolen. Where do you fall under that kind of like using that as your business model too?
Right. So I am definitely not the best at posting on social media. I feel like I have a goal of once a week and I fall short of that. So I'm not the most savvy at promoting my work on social media. And then with the brain hemorrhage, I wasn't on social at all until Des Moines. So we're talking, 8-10 months or since December, I hadn't posted anything. And I said, well, debut in Des Moines is going to be perfect. So I'll do a little shout out. So I'm probably not the best to ask about that because I don't really have that way of being on social. But I have to let go of someone copying my work because that's just, I don't have any control over that. And so I'm not really worried about that, but just talking about this right now, you're making me write my list of, no, not anxious, but just being like, okay, Carol, you need to put it in your calendar to post on social. List. I'm actually also in the process of revamping my website. So I'm excited about that. It's going to get a little bit of a facelift. And so I'm back and I need to be back on social and don't follow my business path model right now.
So when you say you were off of social for the whole time of your recovery, was that intentional? Is your social basically about your jewelry or is it about your life as well? Like some people will share what they're doing in their life. Did you try and stay off of it for that reason? Because you really just needed to be away from that?
So mostly my Instagram is business related, but I share personal experiences as well, because that's a part of who I am and what I do. But I feel it was part of the stimulating factor, overstimulating, and just the thought of being on Instagram and just that screen time was just not where I was at all. Yeah. And I also wasn't in my studio. I wasn't making work. And it was more a reflective time, a time of solitude and healing. And the thought of being on social just didn't speak to me at all. And so I just I hardly was on at all, even just liking other people's work or posts and whatnot. So it's just a personal decision that I made based on where I was at. And my focus was just on, resting and being present and just keeping things super simple.
Yeah. I know when I was in my recovery mode, I got into major FOMO. It's like, oh, look, people are at this show. Oh, they're at that show. I'm sitting here. You know what I mean? I really felt like I was the world was passing me by. And when
Mm-hmm.
COVID happened, we were all in the same boat. But
Right.
when you were sidelined for all that time, did you have a sense of feeling like the world is passing you by, or were you able to just be in your own space and time and you know what I mean,
Yeah,
not feel?
I didn't really feel that. I mean, I'm a bit of a loner anyway, and so
Mhm.
I just really just kept things even more simple and didn't really it didn't have an effect on me. I
Good.
just was focused on health and healing and getting stronger and visiting with friends and just
Cool.
taking it one step at a time and not feeling like I was missing out. Excited for, people and their achievements and whatever they were doing, and knew that I would be back at it at some point, and I am
Mhm.
now, and that's good. But I definitely do not post all that often,
Mhm.
and want to, like I said, get better at that.
So, you're back with your work, you're back with doing shows. Are you also back with your work with Art and the Pearl?
Yes, yeah,
So Art and the Pearl is coming up here. Maybe we could talk just a little bit about what you're working on with that and what is your role with Art and the Pearl?
right. So we're celebrating. This is the 28th year of Art
Mm,
and the Pearl, and
wow.
it is run by roughly 20 volunteer artists, and we all have positions on the board. And I have the wonderful opportunity of working with Kelly McConnell,
Okay.
incredible printmaker. So we co-run the jury, and we
Mm,
also are registrars. So we're the registration team. So we're pretty much artist communication, artist liaison. We
cool.
do all the communication between the show and the artists. Anything that comes up, you will be talking with Kelly or I.
Okay.
And the jury is really fun to be a part of, and handpicking the jurors. You were a part of that
Mm-hmm.
experience.
A couple of years
And
back. Yeah.
yeah, it's wonderful. It's a hardworking group of individuals, and we pull it together and
Mm-hmm.
create this wonderful show. I'm thrilled to be a part of it. I love that I'm on a team with someone, with Kelly in particular, that, it's because
Yeah.
it's a lot of work to do both those components, and to have each other's back and support is amazing.
Mm.
So,
How
yeah.
important is it, do you think, to have a show with artists working on it together? I'm not knocking shows that don't have, let's say, artist advisory committees or directors who've never been an artist, but I'm asking how important is it, in your opinion, that someone with an artist sensibility is involved in the planning?
I think it's crucial. I mean, we are artists ourselves, and we have a
Mm-hmm.
sense of how we would like a show to be as an artist. So I feel like there's intuitiveness about it already, and a sensibility, rather than, say, a showrunner and a big support system that way. It's different. I just feel
Mm-hmm.
like it's a bit grassroots, it's a bit old school. It's simple, effective. I feel like it just resonates with the artist. There's an understanding, we're all in it together. I feel like it's more of a sense of community, which I think
Mm-hmm.
is great. It's very unique what Art and the
Mm-hmm.
Pearl is doing. I mean, maybe one of the only artist-run shows. I know Art in High Desert takes
Mm-hmm.
off after that model as well. So there's
Yeah.
not many, and I
Right.
just think they've worked really hard to create this vision and have upheld it, and I'm honored to be a part of it in any way
Cool.
that I can help. So
And I love too that you do have such a big group, because I've
mhm.
heard, one of the challenges with a lot of artist run shows like that is just having the manpower, and it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
detract from your own art practice where you feel like, oh, I'm like a full-time showrunner now,
Mm-hmm.
and I really want to be an artist.
Right.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's taken me away from my goal here.
Yeah. We consider it's a volunteer job. It
Yeah.
is like a full part-time job because we
Mm-hmm.
work on the show year round doing
Mm-hmm.
there's different layers, and quiet time December-ish,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think any of us would not do it. I mean, we're really proud to be a team. And
Are most of the people involved, are they local? Are they Portland artists?
yes, yes,
And
yes.
you and I have talked about that you love Portland and your face just lights up. Like you're like, this
Mm-hmm.
is where you found, this is your home. You know what I
Yes,
mean?
it
So
is.
what
It
is it
is.
about Portland that you love so
Yeah.
much? I'd love to hear about it.
Right, right. Yeah, I mean, I came here 29 years ago. I had
Mm.
never been here before. And I mean, we consider that old Portland. I mean, things have changed since then, but
Mm.
it's got a really easygoing vibe about it. And
Mm.
lately, I mean, there's a huge creative scene, a lot of entrepreneurs here. The food scene is incredible. I love food and consider myself a
Mhm.
foodie, and the whole restaurant culture here and farm to table concept. And yeah, it's different. It's funky. I love Portland, and I still love it. And I
Nice.
found my place.
Cool. Well,
Yeah.
awesome. So before we finish our talk, did we cover everything that you wanted to talk about regarding safety and being a jeweler on the road, and just basically the tips for people about safety?
Just that the vulnerability of jewelers at shows, and just how important it is to not let them be alone, like have some sort of security in place, have a buddy
Yeah.
system, just so, and most jewelers are aware of that. They often will have an assistant, or no jeweler is going to like walk to their car by themselves. So just
Yeah.
making a conscious effort to create more security for jewelers at show is super
I think it's good.
important.
Will and I have talked, I mean, a lot of these conversations, Will's wife, Susan, is a jeweler. And so he comes to these conversations already thinking of that where I maybe wouldn't have, or how to be a good art fair neighbor and friend to a jeweler. But
Right.
maybe even jewelers who are new to the business or coming out as emerging artists or something and doing the show market for the first time, to not be afraid to ask for help.
Right. Last year for Art and Pearl, we printed off a paper checklist, or things to consider being a
Mm.
jeweler, and things you can do for your own security, and just an information sheet just to enlighten these individuals, and specifically jewelers, just to help them think about that, like, just to
Yeah,
be
what are some of
mindful.
those punch list things?
Right. I mean, don't only put your jewelry away when your walls are down. You don't start putting jewelry away
Oh.
when you're vulnerable and exposed. So
Mm.
if someone is watching you, they're not seeing where the jewelry is going into. To
Mm.
bring a change of clothes, to change your appearance. Oftentimes, jewelers are dressed and look identifiable with like maybe a colorful dress. And
Mhm.
so I will bring a change of clothes or put something on over that, just to kind of just change the look a little bit. And I think
Yeah.
it's good to like compartmentalize if you can carry your jewelry in a few different places. So if you were to get targeted and your pack was taken, or however you're transporting your work, that everything wasn't taken, that there's some distribution involved. That is
Mm.
something to consider. But definitely a sort of buddy system is, I think, great
Yeah.
to just check in for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Those are important points that we take for
Definitely.
granted. I know this can't be said enough. I know that Will brought this up in one of the episodes, and if people didn't hear this episode, I think it's worth repeating. If you know that you're going out to dinner with a friend who's a jeweler, don't draw attention to the thing they're carrying.
Right.
as being perhaps what all their inventory is in. You don't need to point it out. You don't need to ask where it is. You don't need to draw any. It's like keep all that stuff under wraps because none of us are carrying around thousands of dollars worth of work on our backs that can be stolen and then can be melted down and gone.
Right. Yeah, we're just like, just a bag of books, you know?
It is right.
Yeah, just my groceries or whatever. Nothing in here. Don't mind me. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's, it's the manner in which you walk and hold yourself. And, I also studied martial arts for years too. And so learn the way to avoid rather than check. So you just go about your way and you just try to make smart choices and, stay in lodging situations that if you're in a hotel, there's good security. Thankfully, where I stayed in Des Moines, great security at the hotel, and my room had a safe, which was wonderful. So that added another layer of peace of mind to me. So
it sounds like that has to always be the top thing to consider, right? I mean, through the lens of safety.
Right. And, ultimately, you get to decide how you do business and where you go. And I love doing shows. I don't want to not do shows. I just want to be smart about how I'm transporting my work and yeah. I know. And there's just inherently bad people in the world and you have no control over them or what they do. And so if you can just do your best at being safe and secure.
And it doesn't mean you have to stop doing your business because there are bad people out there.
Right, exactly.
You just need to keep an eye out.
Totally. I mean, there was even consideration. I did have a thought in regards to my own studio being broken into. I was totally targeted, 100%. And so fear factor, someone knows I'm there, right? And do I stay there or do I relocate? And I talked to a handful of colleagues and they're like, no, you can totally stay there. You just need to just beef things up a bit and you can totally feel safe in that space. And that's what I've done because I've been in that space for 25 years at least. And so there's a comfort level and sense of being there that I didn't want to give up. But if I ever do reach a point where, no, this isn't feeling right, everything that is in my studio can come out and go to a new location. No problem. It's just a shift.
Yeah. It's just not the decision to be made right now.
Exactly.
But for right now, this is the right place to be and you're not going to get chased off. But that can change in the future.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So given the year that you've had, I'm sure a lot of things had to be reevaluated. We've talked about, stress and handling your life, differently. But if we kind of look at things as like a takeaway, what would you say that at the end of it all, you learned from that whole experience or what kind of that takeaway from it is?
You just can't take anything for granted. I mean, life in every moment is so precious. And I feel like that's that component of how I'm throughout my day, I'm just really present and following through with everything that I feel like that's key. And just doing what you say you're going to do, because you just never know what's going to happen. Anything can happen. And I think just doing your best and being present and living and finding joy and love in what you do in your community. And I wake up every day and, I've got a smile on my face and I'm like, I'm still here and this is great. I'm not dead yet. And hallelujah.
Yeah, no
I get
kidding.
to play some more. And, I can laugh about the experience now. I mean, I talk about my brain exploding and, different things come up and we can have a good morbid laugh about things. But in all seriousness, I mean, scariest thing I ever went through, and I'm glad the results are what they are and I'm not impaired. And and I still get to do what I love. I feel like I've been given a second chance, truly. And so just really grateful. Yeah.
I guess what I get out of our conversation here is it's like, in some respects, life is so fragile, isn't it? You know, there's so many aspects where we're so incredibly vulnerable. But then you were also given the gift of being supported and getting strength and support from people all around you, you know? And you are, like you said, you're still here. And you still have more stuff to do.
Exactly. It's not my time yet.
More life to live.
Absolutely.
And I'm really excited just to hear about this journey you've been on, and also just the nuances of what's going through our head every day on a day-to-day basis. And we are in control of that.
Yeah. So, truly blessed. Yes.
Well, I look forward to seeing you out in Portland and giving you another big hug. And thanks for taking time and telling me about you and your story here right now.
Such an honor. Thank you for inviting me. It's so good.
Absolutely.
Yay.
All right. Well, much love to you, Carol. And
much love.
We'll talk soon.
All right. Cheers.
All right,
bye.
This podcast is brought to you by the National Association of Independent Artists. The website is naiaartists.org.
Also sponsored by Zapplication. That's zapplication.org. And while you're at it, find us on social media and engage in these conversations.
Be sure to subscribe to this podcast to be notified when we release new episodes.
Oh, and if you like the show, we'd love it if you would give us your 5-star rating and offer up your most creative review on your podcast streaming service. See you next time.